very difficult to get emergency pumps up there. So 2 or 3 of us in the valley volunteered with quad bikes and all-terrain vehicles to carry them up, which we did all the first day. But it helped. If we hadn't done that, our properties might have been in danger, so it was a sensible thing to do.
The fire seemed to blow to the back of the pike and then link up with the other fire that was on the moors at the other side. And really, although it was horrible, it was a really good thing because it meant that it didn't come down where people are.
On the Saturday of that week, I was travelling back down to Winter Hill, and I noticed that the conditions were significantly worse than what I'd witnessed on the previous 2 days. Both the volume and the colour of the smoke was much more aggressive than it had been in the last 48 hours. What actually happened is, due to a change in wind conditions, there was a very rapidly developing fire front from the Manchester fire over the top of Winter Hill, which essentially connected 2 moorland fires into one large moorland fire.
Because the fire was spreading so rapidly, they needed a lot of firefighters on the moors quickly. They needed a lot of equipment, and we've got the local area knowledge, so we helped them with all the access points as well, and we've got the 4-wheel drive vehicles. So we got them up onto the moors pretty quickly, so we helped wherever we could really.
We were first called up on the Thursday night that the fire started, and I came up with some of our contractors to remove their diesel generators from Belmont Road, just below the pike, because obviously that was an immediate fire risk. It was bright orange, the whole hillside, smoke everywhere, and it was pretty scary.
I knew, and experience was telling me, that this was going to be an incident that was going to require significant resource over a long period of time, but also significant resource in terms of a multi-agency approach.
I think things really picked up on the Saturday morning. They decided that they wanted all the footpaths closing to Winter Hill and Rivington, and we had the staff and the capability to do that, so that's how we started really.
Business as usual kind of went out the window at that point as soon as the fire started. Everybody who was available was deployed up on the moor to try and support getting the fire out.
If you view the moor as a large jigsaw, what we were seeking to do was to develop control lines that cut and cross over the moorland. The control lines were established through using plant machinery, and arguably that was the key method for establishing control lines. So this is physically creating almost trenches across the moorland, which would ensure that it created a very solid fire break should the fire develop up to that point.
United Utilities have quite a lot of contractors who are sort of really good, hard-working contractors, which is why they're on our framework initially. And most of them came at the drop of a hat, and some of the sort of facilities that they had that we couldn't provide, and you know, it was quite indispensable really. A lot of them were sort of slurry tankers that have been sort of amended. We've had certain contractors that made couplings that would help sort of utilise your pumps as well, and obviously they were absolutely paramount to obviously obtaining water from local sources and delivering it to where the areas where we needed them.
Second week, third week, fourth week, we still had fire engines here 24 hours a day. The most we had in the yard at any one time was 5, I think. A lot of disruption, but the fire actually got 200 metres from our house. So I wasn't bothered at all about fire services being here. It was just a relief. It was brilliant.
We've been on site almost constantly for the last 3.5 weeks, spotting fires, taking out trees to create fire breaks, and generally trying to keep the public informed and away from the area.
We laid fibre optic cable for high-speed broadband around the Goosener area. I'd heard that the fire service were looking for a machine which could carry some containers full of water. So I put this together, brought it down, and it seems to have been of some use.
and Winter Hill worked extremely hard. The weather conditions were very, very difficult. The terrain was difficult. Twinned with having a primary role as well, the RDS did an amazing job up there. The huge support from the primary employers, very understanding in letting them release from their primary employment to undertake the RDS duties, over and above what they're usually contracted to do, which were brilliant. Given the amount of RDS we have within Lancashire, I don't believe we could have, got the successful conclusion of that incident without their support.
For me personally, I've been in Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service for 27 years, and probably this will be one of the most challenging incidents that I've had to deal with, but at the same time probably one of the most proudest incidents that I've overseen in the role of an incident commander. I think, incredible thanks and respect to firefighters, not just within Lancashire, and those firefighters and officers did a first-class job and should be very proud of what they've achieved. And equally that thanks extends to external partners as well. We could not have resolved this incident without developing a true multi-agency way of working.
It was a real team effort, and that's one thing I'm most proud about really from my team, is just how hard everybody worked and how dedicated people were.
I think a lot of it underlies with passion and the love of this area. The passion came through, and that spurred us on. There was no lapse in concentration. We all got tired, we all know that, but the passion pulled us through and it made us do what we needed to do to get this job done.
I feel quite humbled really by the generosity of members of the public, and I've never experienced anything on this scale in the time that I've been within the service, and the impact that has both for firefighters and other partner agencies working on the moors is to raise and to lift morale, and actually, all staff involved were acutely aware that the public were hugely supportive and appreciative of their efforts.
Absolutely incredible that just the donations that we're bringing up.
Yeah. Even down to a primary school baking cakes.
Oh yeah.
Baking cakes for us.
It really was. Yeah.
Some lovely local stories of elderly ladies turning up with a baked cake, through to young people who were bringing down cool boxes, and you got young boys and girls handing ice lollies out to firefighters. So, fantastic, and I think really just indicative of how well regarded fire and rescue services are by members of the public.